poor will think scarcity and the rich will think abundance, and I think we talked about that before. The poor will play not to lose, so they don't want to lose, whereas the rich will play to win. The poor blame others, and you're probably starting to identify with people you know that have this sort of mindset, and then people you know that have this mindset. They take responsibilities. The poor are a passenger in life, they'll just follow, and whereas the rich, they will be the driver in life. The poor get lost in the detail while the big see the big picture. And I guess that's what I'm really trying to show you ladies today, is have a look at the big picture now. Because yes, you need to work on the foundations of your business, but this is what can happen. The poor want to be rich while the rich are committed to getting rich, which comes back to discipline. The poor see debt as bad, and if anybody, like my parents, I grew up in a European culture, and it was about paying off the mortgage, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to, and I want you to pay off your mortgage, but you need to again look at that big picture and go, well, wait a minute, debt can enable you to create wealth, as opposed to if anybody else, my parents just paid their house and paid their house and paid their house off, and that was their priority, and now they're on a pension. Debt is risky. Debt is risky if you can't get it, but more importantly, if you are out of control, is what I see. If you know, again, you hear the same thing I'm telling to you ladies over and over and again, be in control, do the foundations, do your cash flow. Debt is not risky if you know what's coming in and you can control, all your expenses. Failure is bad, and failure is choice. All right? Don't need to learn, or they invest in their education. Alright? So hopefully you can take that and start to think about this, be more on this side than on the other side.
That is the greatest thing I've seen in regards to explaining what different personalities are about and why people make it in business and why they don't. Because you meet people and they just say the same thing year in, year out, year in, year out, and wow, that's the best way I've seen it ever done.
Yeah, I like it.
Sort of
it's a great slide.
People as opposed to I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Well, I don't pay tax on it, but
Rich people do tax on it.
To make them richer.
Can you just go back for a minute?
Slide.
that have that attitude too, that always, it's always my fault, or I've got bad luck, and it always happens to me, and they're draining. It's like, you have a choice in life. You either do that or that. Make a decision. Are we right?
Yeah.
I'll send through the slides, guys, as well, so don't worry too much about it.
On my wall.
Yeah, me too. I love that. That's really good.
So good. All right. So
can read it.
Yeah, no what? Exactly why.
Only a husband, just you read it.
I'll read it too, but
No, just to say,
Holly knows
this
what I
is
mean.
where I'm at. I'm on this side. Don't put me here
Bring
because
me
I'm
down.
not.
if
I'm on
anybody goes
this
over the
side.
Westgate Bridge, there's a few years ago now, and there used to be an ad with a lady in a beautiful car, and she said, I used to want to marry a millionaire, now I just want to be one.
Yeah.
And I love that. It's so powerful. Anyway, laying the foundation. So the poor, they save, the rich borrow and gear up. All right, the poor think cash flow, where the rich think how much equity have we got. All right. They build their cash flow, these guys build their equity, they spend their cash flow. So when they get their money in, oh wow, we've got all this money, let's go and spend it, we'll go and buy a new car, Xbox, those sort of things. Whereas these guys will look and they'll go, all right, what can we do? We'll put it into the property to give us the equity to do it that way. And they spend their equity on other property assets. If you look at the top rich in the BRW, the majority of them are all rich because of property. Poor decrease their debt, rich increase their assets. Pay off their home loan, they buy appreciating assets. They trade time for money and they work their money. Alright? And these guys will trade, they buy and sell property, and these ones will invest. And there is another thing on here that basically says the rich never sell, but I do believe there is a time that sometimes you need to sell, and it's an opportunity opportunity sale. So what if you sold this one, you can then buy something else that's going to give you more. So I'm not a true believer of never sell. I think there are times when you need to.
It's very good.
Is that, when you say equity, do you mean goodwill?
Yes, and I would say your systems and processes is what's going to build your business as a service-based industry. Mine is a service-based industry as well.
Yeah.
So we don't have any product. We have clients. So our clients, if I have to sell my business in time, I don't think you can ever sell a client, but I am selling the loans or the insurances that I'm doing and those sort of things to make money out of that.
When you have a business, what you need to do is write.
And Craig Rich, should be a woman's name on there.
Cindy. Or no, Rebecca Rich.
He decided he's going to put his 30,000 and gear it into property. Now, with the purchase of the car, obviously you're not getting any return other than the pleasure of driving the vehicle. Whereas with Melissa, she's going to get, say on average, a 7% return. Now I've tried to do it exactly the same in terms of a 7% return so we can compare apples with apples, okay? And Craig Rich, he's borrowed 95% of a purchase price and he has also a 7% return every 10 years. So his asset was worth $300,000 for Craig Rich because he bought a house worth $300,000. And you'll notice there 10% is $30,000, so I've just taken some costs in there for stamp duties and stuff like that. Melissa, hers is worth, the start of year one, hers is worth $30,000 because that's what she's put into her term deposit, let's say. And when he first bought this car, he may have taken out of the showroom, it's probably already worth $28,000. But we'll say, to be nice to Tim there, that it's worth $30,000. Now, with Craig, he's geared his property at 95% of the purchase price, and therefore there we go, oh no, it doesn't
No, it reflects off the screen.
So, so his equity is about 15,000 and he's got a debt of 285 against that. Now, assuming 10 years, remember we've got a 7% return every 10 years, and in, particularly in Melbourne, that's the type of figures. We've actually been getting probably about an 8% return over every 10 years. And I'll talk to you a little bit about returns later on if we can continue with this. So in 10 years' time, Craig has doubled his money in terms of the value of that property. Melissa's value is now about $59,000 because she's put it in a savings account. And I think I was generous there, it depends on the vehicle.
About $3,000.
Yeah.
So now, in 10 years' time, Craig's got equity of $315,000, all right? And you'll see there Melissa's got $59,000 because she's a little bit of a sitting on the poor side, just thinking about saving money, okay? In year 20, Tim's car, and again I've been very generous, it's probably
It won't be on the road.
well,
It's at the records.
vintage, but anyway. Melissa's now $116,000 because, and that is compounding interest too, by the way. So she hasn't taken the money out; it's compounded. And then his property is worth about $1.2 million, and you've got equity there of about $915. All right. So what's happened over here? This is purely on the equity basis only. He'd obviously receive rent coming in, and he may have a small shortfall, or it could be positively geared, but it's just basically receiving rents only. This is what happens with the property. Now, obviously, he still needs to be able to afford to make this loan repayment. All right, so that's the key here. So you need affordability, which comes back to our cash flow planning to make sure you can put the shortfall in there if there is a shortfall. So you had on that last screen, he had made in 20 years' time $915,000. Right? Now, if Craig had purchased 3 properties and did the same thing, so this way when he has got obviously $90,000, so over here, if we had this $100,000 line of credit set up that we could then use to go and fund these 3 properties, we could buy 3 properties worth $300,000. And the same thing, I'm just going to go through these here. You can have a look here that by the end of the 20-year time, those properties would be worth $3.6 million. I know you're going to go, but Joanne, it's a lot of money. I can't imagine a $300,000 property today being worth that much. I'm going to show you some stats. So even if he didn't pay anything off these loans, all right, it was just a pure interest-only loans, this is what he would have. Now, how does that compare to what was on your list that you did earlier just before about how much money you would need in retirement, or what's the asset value in retirement.
That's more than what I had.
Yeah.
So this just gives you something to go, you know what, maybe I need only 3 properties, or 2 properties, or something like that. So if Craig sold 1 property in 20 years for 1.2, so remember he had the 3 properties, if he sold one of those properties, he would net, after he sold that particular property, he would net 900,000. Now I haven't gone into capital gains tax because there are ways we can avoid capital gains tax, alright, but he comes out with $900,000 in his hand. He could then use that $900,000 to pay for the other 2 debts. Remember he had $285 on each side, and he would still have another $345,000 sitting in his savings account. All right. The 2 properties remaining would provide him gross rental income of approximately $120,000 per annum. So anyone, you don't have to tell me this, but if anyone had that figure in there as their, retirement planning, this is a way you could do it. Now that's based on a 5% return. Now in Melbourne at the moment, our average rent returns sit anywhere between 4 and 5%. All right. At 4% return, he would get $100,000 worth of income. Now I have not even included the additional income that he would get from the savings sitting in that term deposit or wherever else he wanted to invest it. All right. So 3 properties, 300,000. If you're going in for long term, it's not difficult, is it?
No. Make it look really easy. I just wished I'd started more 10, 15, 20 years
and
ago.
we're not taught this in school and stuff. It's just something that
My parents need to talk.
something they should know.
And when you take it, look, and I'll keep going because I need to talk through this so you can understand. I'm going to show you a bit about the history of property, because my husband tells me all the time, he goes, but Jo, property's not going to double in 10 years. He goes, there's no way.
It does.
But he says to me, no. He goes, we've had, and I show him this. I go, babe, look at this. This was the value in 1943, then 1953, 1963. You can see that, and all the things that have happened that everybody said, prices can't go any higher. Prices can't go any higher. No way, no way. Now, we have seen a slowing in the market because this was, when I started talking about all this sort of stuff, was back in 2009. That was the average price back then. And you've seen what's happened is we've gone back to 2009 prices. All right. Now, whether or not 2019 it will be this figure here,
it will.
I actually believe the property market at the moment, again, don't take this, nobody knows, but I think we're seeing a flat line in the market for the next 18 months, particularly here in Melbourne. Right? I think if you're, but it will continue to, it will go back up again. We will see it going back up, and it will probably take, to get some nice boom. I think 3-5 years is probably where we're really looking, and it's going to slow a little bit.
But that being said, the flat line is the ideal time for all of us to be buying.
Yes.
That's the key point.
That's
We're
right.
not selling your
Yes.
house right now.
So someone wants to buy a house.
Yeah.
Are you desperate to sell? Because I'll find a buyer.
We're not desperate, but we want the right price.
But it's also making it
Have a
really
look at it, she
difficult
jumped
for
on it.
young people to buy a house.
Someone, I mean,
because their wages aren't that huge.
No, but you've got to start. And so it might mean that instead of buying in Melbourne on 520, you might have to just get yourself in a property that has infrastructure that's a little bit further out or in another area. One of the things that
Horsham good.
where was that?
Horsham.
See, country market's a whole different thing.
High rental, but no capital gain.
Yes.
No capital gain.
Yeah.
Well, my pick of the crop, if you're in a position to buy right now, would be Mackay.
Yeah.
No, Mackay, Queensland.
Queensland.
Really?
Yeah, they're just
Positive
sitting on
growth. You've got so
the
much
border.
infrastructure going out there at the moment, and there's over 20 mines in that, so it's not based on one infrastructure only. So, yeah.
Western Australia.
But the buying price, you can still get in for about $350 for a unit that's returning you about $500 a week.
Good.
So I just put in there what happens if property doesn't increase at 7%, and let's just say it goes to 5%. Alright, so if we don't get that double your money every 10 years, and it went to 5%, let's see what happens. So what have I got here? Okay, so this is in the first, today he's bought 3 properties worth 900,000. He's got 3 loans on them at 855,000, and I like to keep my debts separate, so don't go to one bank, whatever you do, keep them all with separate lenders. And the equity there he's got is 45,000.
Do you want to talk about that? Yeah, so just what's the benefit of going to different banks?
Being in control.
Yeah.
You control it because, now, actually I won't say the name because you know this person, but a very good client of mine, she had all her properties with one bank, a big bank, and they cross-collateralised everything, and I'll just explain that means that if you've got one loan, the security for that loan was, she had probably, I don't know, about 5 properties at least, they were all tied into one loan. So she might have had separate loans for separate properties, but they were all the houses that she had, all were tied in. So to get out of that any one of those loans, it was a nightmare. Properties had to get revalued, and it's just a nightmare. But not only that was a nightmare, the most important thing is that that bank said, you know what, sorry, we're not going to lend you any more money. You're at your peak. And remember I said to you before about the banks have different assessment rates, different criteria if you have a fixed rate. So she came to me, we took 12 months to unravel this web of this major bank, and we moved everything out and into different things, and we enabled her